Stock futures are up right now. Tomorrow could be another record day on Wall Street. The administration will remind you the border is completely closed, and they stopped a massive tax increase this past summer. Unemployment is low by historical standards, as is inflation. What I just told you are facts. And yet, American optimism is at an all-time low. And that's not us saying it, that's you. 59% of Americans anticipate high-quality lives in the next 5 years. The lowest score Gallup has seen since they started the survey 2 decades ago. In 2017, when Trump started his first term, that number was 68.2%. The White House put out a memo telling the American people, quote, "Don't be a panicking. We are winning and we're not slowing down." Cited many of the wins and some more things, as we did at the top of this segment. Trump and Republicans have a problem. You can call it a messaging problem, an image problem, a reality problem. But the disconnect between what I said at the top and those polling numbers is a problem. With us now, Bill O'Reilly, host of the No Spin News, BillO'Reilly.com, author of Confronting Evil, Assessing the Worst of the Worst. Bill, a good buddy of mine, Tony Katz, radio host out in Indianapolis, used to always say that Trump always wins. First rule of Trump. How does Trump get a win right now to turn the feeling in the country around?
Well, I think he's counting on the tax refunds to really gin up the economy. That would be number one. Number two, the administration believes that Iran and Cuba will fall. Now, it is true that most Americans don't vote foreign policy. The third thing is that the Trump administration has to figure out how to bring down insurance costs. Insurance, that's the main reason that working people are finding themselves short of cash. And if you live in a high-tax state like New York, where I am, you're being taxed up to here, and then you got to pay these enormous insurance costs, and it dwarfs food. And you're looking around after the month and going, where is the money going? Well, it's going to insurance costs, and it's going to taxes. And people are getting discouraged, and that's the poll you just cited.
Harriet over on CNN has talked about this, about President Trump's job approval numbers. Take a listen.
Absolutely crazy in how the American people have totally turned on Donald Trump. Take a look here. Trump's net approval rating on jobs and employment. In January 2025, look at that. Overall, plus 9 points. Hey, that's pretty good. But down he goes, minus 13 points overall. But you think that's nuts? Take a look at the independents. They go from plus 7 way, way, way down off the screen to minus 30 points.
I'm not sure how you get off the screen when it's still on the screen, but the point is made. The question is this, Bill, does Trump need to acknowledge how people are feeling about insurance costs, that people are feeling, and I will borrow a term that is from history, the malaise of America right now?
I think so. I think he would be better served than doing the press goggle, which always devolves into name calling, which doesn't do anybody any good. I think he should have commercials, television commercials, that he puts out and says, here's the reality of the situation. Now, you talk to the president about having a summit of all insurance company CEOs at the White House and trying to come to some agreement that the insurance companies would stop gouging the American public. See, all of these things are photo ops, but they give the impression the president of the United States is on the case. He's trying to stem all this. And the poll numbers are just a daily thing. But I think the president, if he would do some 30-second TV spots, laying out the facts or whatever his vision is, that would help him.
You make the point that people don't vote on foreign policy, but Cuba falling and Iran falling would be big wins. Here's President Trump talking about a deal with Iran, though, just a few minutes ago on Fox Business.
Do you think a deal with Iran, with this current regime, would ever really stick?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I know one thing. They want to make a deal. They wouldn't talk to anybody else, but they're talking to me.
Do we want to deal with Iran, Bill? This is a regime that chants death to America and executes its own people because they protested in hospitals. And somehow we're seem to think that a deal with them is a good thing.
So 1 week ago, the president gave me a call and asked me exactly the question that you're asking me. Here's what I answered. A deal at this point in history that would have them completely neutered in the nuclear area and include a release of political prisoners inside Iran is better than the United States bombing the country and killing a bunch of Muslims. That was my answer. I don't know if the mullahs will do that unless they're really up against the wall and their own lives are at stake. But that was my answer to the president's question.
Okay. Is there not a middle ground that you do to Iran, what, as you pointed out, America is doing to Cuba, and strangle them?
There's no middle ground on Iran because of their secret police and army capacity. So if that deal were made, that would embolden the Persian people who don't want this kind of theocracy any longer. But you got to let the Persians sort it out. America and Israel, which is what would be the propaganda aspect of it, removing the mullahs is going to create a lot of turmoil and unintended consequences around the world.
Yeah, well, we've heard about those before. Where does the president need to be focused in his attention? I say that because there seems to be a lot of things that may not be directly helpful to the American people or fix the issues we were talking about at the top. Here's President Trump today, Friday, and Caroline Leavitt talking about renaming Penn Station in New York and Dulles Airport.
You would want Penn Station and Dulles Airport to be named after you. Is that
He suggested that to me. Chuck Schumer suggested that to me about changing the name of Penn Station to Trump Station.
To your first question about the renaming, why not? It was something the president floated in his conversation with Chuck Schumer.
Good politics?
Look, you know, if you don't get President Trump by now, you're never going to get him. His rationale is, I'm going to rebuild Dulles, which is a dump, and it is. And I'm going to rebuild Penn Station, which you can't even walk through. The ceilings are 6'1". I actually have to do the limbo when I go to Penn Station. And because we're going to allot the federal money to do that, I need some credit on it. That's his thinking process. Now, all it is just reinforces the people who don't like Donald Trump that he's a megalomaniac, but it's not anything of importance at all. It's not. Okay. He's the same guy he was in 2016. At least he's consistent, Leland. It's the same guy.
No, that's what
he's not changing.
I would say he's the same guy. He's the same guy if you know him better than I do, but just in terms of watching him and covering him, the same guy since the 1980s, right? That's who Donald Trump is.
35. I've known him 35 years. He hasn't changed one bit. Not one bit.
Okay, so I'm going to give you this at the end. Okay, I'm going to give you this at the end. You were on this program a little less than a year ago saying that if things don't turn around by April, there is serious problems. Things turning around being the economy. Are you seeing the signs that things are getting better in America?
Somewhat. Anybody who's in the stock market with their 401ks or college funds, they're doing great. That's a lot of folks, okay? Unemployment, you can get a job. And if you're in a certain part of the country, a well-paying job. So somewhat. But the perception is that prices are too high because they are in very vital areas. And if the midterms were held tomorrow and you were a betting person, I think you'd have to bet that Democrats would win one of the two houses of Congress.
All right. Bill O'Reilly, good to see you as always. I know you're on with Cuomo tomorrow night. We'll be watching.
Thanks, Leland.
The Epstein.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.